Hello and welcome back to the Gym Academy podcast, the one-stop shop for anything when it comes to growing your gym and becoming a successful business owner. And on that topic, I have someone who's been helping gym owners and business owners in general for a while now take their businesses to the next level, even before he joined the Gym Academy team. I want to introduce my good friend, Adam Holman.
How you guys doing? Pleasure to be here.
Super excited to have you on here, buddy. I had Ryan on here last podcast. He started off strong, but you have a very fun background, very interesting story. So would you mind kind of sharing your background and how you got into this business?
Yeah, sort of a roundabout way. So obviously grew up playing a lot of sports and originally played sports in college and went to college to be a writer. That was my ultimate goal. Wanted to write for a newspaper, wanted to cover a bunch of different topics, but obviously specifically wanted to be a sports writer just because I love sports. But midway through my college career, iPads were invented, newspapers died, and that career path sort of exited the realm of possibility. So pivoted towards my second love, which was taking care of yourself, health, fitness. I grew up in a family where my mom she had battled weight for a really long time, and I never wanted that to be the case for myself. I always wanted to learn as much as possible to help her at some point, and that kind of career path was something that seemed logical to me. And so I graduated college as a trainer, still got my journalism degree in broadcasting, but never really went that route, and then opened a gym not shortly thereafter, and then owned it for a decade. During the course of that period of time as being an owner, realized that a lot of other gym owners didn't understand business. So probably about midway through my ownership, I started to coach other owners in terms of what is the data telling us, what can we understand, how can we better implement, and eventually sold my gym so that there was nothing keeping me there anymore. I was single and I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the country. I opened my gym 3 towns away from where I grew up. So I wanted to experience other cultures and understand that. So I ended up moving and spending the next 6 years all across the United States doing what I do now, but in person for gyms that were relatively close to closing or needed some sort of answer to their issues that they couldn't really seem the roadblock. So took me to a lot of cool places, met a lot of cool people, but I love what I do now with Gym Academy because it allows me to have that same level of insight and effect and help, but I don't have to live out of a suitcase, which was, it got pretty tiring after a while.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me a story of you were in a checkout line. And you're like, I have to just buy pots and pans everywhere I go because I can't take anything with me. That sounds
Yeah,
awful.
when I moved to Baton Rouge, I packed up my truck with as much as I could. And first place that I went when I pulled in was Target. Coming from the Northeast and coming from a situation or a society where we are short and to the point, and you never have to wonder what somebody thinks of you up here. Moving to Louisiana and South Louisiana for that, I spent 42 minutes checking out because I had to buy all the new stuff, and the girl at the counter knew or realized that I was buying spatulas and silverware for one person, one pan, and she's like, "Clearly, you're new here." So she gave me an entire rundown of the city, and it was not something that I was used to, but definitely opened my eyes to how different things were in different places.
I actually want to talk about that a little more. I'm kind of interested. What is kind of the major differences you found from helping someone remotely versus online? Because I know quite a few people who are online coaches and they want to do they're in-person coaches, they want to switch to online. I'm kind of curious what the outside of that looks like. Someone who actually helps business coaching. I've never heard that experience.
Coming from working with people in the facility into online, well, the biggest thing was within communication level, just in terms of that, is I knew what I was getting myself into immediately based on where I was moving. I understood not immediately, but throughout the course of this journey, understood how different areas of the country communicate, which is different. And you have to understand that first and foremost. So when I'm now remote, that possibility is really gone. The understanding really takes place within the first 15, 20 minutes of meeting them on an onboarding and understanding them. And that's why I take my time, especially in the beginning, to try to understand them. And then I try to understand their business because they communicate a very specific way. And if you're not prepared for that, if you're not ready for that, if I don't explain that to you, it comes off different than how I'd like it to come off. I don't like gray area. I'm very black and white. If I ask you a question, I want the answer to that question. I don't want a 10-minute rant on something else. And it takes people a little bit to get used to me, and I have to get used to them. So I can sometimes stay in that frame, especially with people that are from closer to where I am, whether it's DC, New York, Philly, Boston, that whole area. And if they're not, and if it requires a little bit more nuance, then I know I have to change and I have to, not so much soften, but soften, for lack of a better word, without losing the necessity that I have in terms of being clear and to the point. So that takes a little bit more thought process than I used to have to give it, because normally when I would travel, I already knew all of that about a person. And then secondly, it was understanding what their business looks like from the inside out. I just look at more, I'm very more data driven now than I was before. Before I was very much like, what does it feel like when I'm in there? How is everything set up for success, whether it's good or bad? What changes can I make from a physical standpoint within the facility to make sure that it makes sense to a potential client? And now it's very much more process based. Obviously still people based, and we still have to teach, which I did enjoy doing in person as well, but I can't change how the gym feels, can't change vibes that people get when they're in there, can't change the flow of things, which you can set up a gym incorrectly. You can set up a gym correctly. It's just, it goes along with the process. And that's something that was removed from the ability for me to do now. So it's much more emphasis on what I can control, which is sales, lead nurture, marketing aspects, stuff like that.
That makes perfect sense, man. I feel like in both factors, it's kind of just figuring out what the major constraints are you're running into, rather that be like how it's set up, or and now it's more of just the data side of things, which I've always felt like you really excel at. So how do you kind of go about? So now that you switch data, before you could actually be there in person, you could actually see like what's going on. You could see the whole framework. How do you identify constraints now in a business that you're working with completely remotely?
Well, I appreciate you thinking that I'm good at data. It's something that's taken some time to understand. When I first opened my gym, for the first 2 years, I didn't have any data. I didn't write anything down. It was all up here. I was the only employee, so I didn't have to think about any of that. But so that's been a big shift personally. But anyway, to answer your question, to identify a constraint, even if you just remove the data aspect, which the data does tell us a lot, I really identify constraints based on what their team looks like, how often they communicate with each other, what that communication aspect is. Like, is it a true sit down meeting? Are you just texting your team? What are the expectations you set for your team comparative to what they think they are, right? So understanding like I said, I hate gray area, but a lot of other people live in it. So that where is the gray area within the business? Because a lot of owners will get on and be like, well, my team's not great. Well, why aren't they great? Are you not letting them know what they should be doing from an XYZ perspective? Do they have scorecards? Do they understand their role? Are they performing their role to what you said it could be, or what they just kind of morphed into? So a lot of it is honestly, it's a lot of personality traits that I notice, especially with owners. And then jumping from there to go to GMs, it's very much the same thing. It's, do they understand what the owner wants from them? Is that actually being explained, or is that something that they've had to just figure out? And most of the time, that's going to be the number one constraint, is lack of communication, lack of clarity, stuff that needs to be determined on that level. And then taking that a step further is then I'm going to role play with them in terms of the sales process, whether it's a discovery call, whether it's understanding what they believe in themselves, if it's a self-belief issue, and what they're selling from their business. So a lot of people will sell features, and they'll sell, this is what we have, and we have this, and this. And that's not the business that we're in. We're in the business of transforming lives. We're in the business of changing people's health, and we're in the business of outcomes. And if their immediate response to a sales process is to tell you what they have and not what they can do for you, then I know that that's a huge constraint as well. So it's just understanding those two aspects and then trying to mold it together to get people to be in a clearer path, create more clarity for their team, and then understand what they're actually selling, sell the vacation, not the flight.
A lot I want to talk about there. The first thing, as soon as you started talking about the team thing, I was instantly like, I always go back whenever I hear someone complaining about their team, and all I can think of is, you hired them.
Exactly.
You've
Yeah.
made this decision.
Yeah.
How are you going to blame them for it?
Funny when a lot of people, so I'm in the process now where I've worked with enough people that I've seen teams change, and I've seen teams morph, and people quit, and people leave, and people get fired, and then new people get hired. And I've been in conversations with owners that, oh, I just interviewed this person. They're great. Great. Why? And I don't think that they value the correct aspects of a person related to what they're looking for. So somebody who's great at sales, maybe you, I'm not sure, but a lot of people that we work with think that somebody who's good at sales means they're chatty, they're friendly, they're really nice. That doesn't make you good at sales. So it's changing what they're looking for, and then two, changing their expectation when they find the person, right? So that's a huge thing when it comes to a team.
I think it's a very underappreciated skill, is learning how to properly hire and assess what a role needs to be. It's something people don't take a lot of time trying to learn too. What's some things that you've done in the past to like help identify A players and figure out how to hire the right people based on what you're looking for?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, the ability to be direct is important to me, but also be direct, but with a purpose, so to speak, right? I can tell you exactly what to do, but if I don't explain to you why I want you done in that way, it doesn't really carry a lot of efficacy or weight. Personally, when I hired people for my gym, I waited 3.5 years before I hired anybody. And then most of the people that I hired, in fact, all the people that I hired were either training partners, became really good, close friends with me, and had taken so many of my training sessions that they knew what I expected from them. A lot of the work was done for me. But that's
Mhm.
just a testament to I value communication as a clear communication. I'm not like, well, do it your way. No. This is the way it should be done. This is what I believe in. So when there's different level of A player, like there's different A players for each type of person and each type of owner. For example, I've worked with owners that didn't like me because I am too black and white and I don't take into account a lot of emotions that people might have, which, okay, that's just something that I've tried to work on. But at the same time, somebody that values that type of emotional connection or nuanced conversation, a different person would be an A player for them. So there's no one size fits all in terms of this person's really great and this person's really not, but you have to identify what are your bullet points of importance to you. And then how can that person, I always work backwards. So like what is important to me? And then how can a person fit into that parameter? And there could be a bunch of different answers to it, but it's just, you have to identify what you value and then how somebody fits into what you value.
Yeah, that's something that I actually struggle with quite a bit when I first started because I kind of did it backwards, I think. I think I align more with you whenever it comes to the business side, whenever it comes to very black and white. Like this is how I operate. For example, I would hire people and I have a very stringent process. I have trouble worrying about how people feel in the process. It's just here's the steps that I need you to follow, and I want it to be followed exactly this way every single time, which for like someone working admin or front desk always went very well. Like my systems work great. But when you get into like the coaching side of things and you have to have more, it's more emotional based. I kind of like stifled a lot of that. So I have a hard time finding that balance between like giving someone enough freedom to really own the role and having it done exactly the way I want it to be done. So that's something that I'm still trying to work on myself.
I mean, that's a struggle for a lot of people and a struggle with me as well. Cause I looked at it when I first hired people for my own gym is I taught a specific way. And at the time, I mean, I was pretty young, I was in my 20s. I wasn't ready for somebody to teach it a different way at my gym because it was my baby. My blood, sweat, and tears built that place. And I had to learn to appreciate other people's tonality, personality, the way they. As long as A to Z I wanted it to be, then you can fill in the blanks with your own personality, and people appreciated that. It just took some getting used to from my end. So I built out what I required from the start of class to the end of class from fulfilling the situation, but the middle of it is all you. And that's the hiring of good people for me, was people who could still follow the A and the Z, but could fill in the rest of it, made sense within the community itself that I had built, but also provided something client that we had, and they felt like they walked away still learning something, and I didn't have to be the one that was teaching it.
That's incredibly powerful whenever you can get it right. I've had a couple people who have had a little bit. I've given them the free reign. I've given them the syllabus. This is what you need to do. Just like you were saying, and it's amazing how many times the clients come back and you're like, it was so nice to have this like different take on these different things. How did you like make sure that obviously communication is super important, but how did you make sure it was being communicated the things that needed to get done were getting done? Like, did you have a specific system in place that you used to like relay like a checklist or something, or what did you do to make sure that you make sure things were repeatable and kept getting done the way you wanted them to get done?
The truth be told, I didn't give my coaches much responsibility outside of coaching class. So if they took the coaching off of my plate, I was able to do all the other stuff. And that was how I kind of transitioned off of the floor, off of being the face of the business while still just being the front part of it. So for new clients, I met with them. For new onboardings and new people like that, I met with them, and I sold, and I was the person that was out in the community more often than not. But at the same time, when it comes to the actual art of teaching and coaching and being a trainer, I only hired people who I worked out with who their first love was understanding fitness, loving fitness, and then wanting to explain health and fitness to other people. And I had worked with them for, like I said, I waited 3 years to hire anybody. These people that I had worked out with for almost 2.5 of those 3 years, they knew everything inherently without me having to explain it so in depth. So I kind of cheated. I didn't really have to tell them the A, B, and C's of teaching and coaching and being a trainer. I
Mhm.
really just had to personally be okay with giving them something that when I first opened was what I viewed as the job so that I could morph into what the business needed as an ownership. So I don't really have
Right.
an answer for you in terms of how I built it. It was honestly, it was probably a little bit of luck. I got the right people, but I really truly believe the only reason they were the right people was because I had a 2-year training partner friendship with them where I knew what they were about.
I mean, at the end of the day, you got the right people in the door, right spots. Some of the best clients, had to sit down and really like dig deep into this at one point in time because I had just lost a coach and I was trying to find the next person I was going to hire. So I had to build out kind of the structure on figuring out how to find the right coach because nothing's scarier than like last minute, oh no, I need someone to fill a seat. And I kind of came to the same realization you did was I realized that the people that consistently were good coaches for me were the ones who actually went through the program. They seen what it was like. They actually seen how I coach. And those were consistently the ones that over delivered every single time. And I actually ended up making it a requirement in my gym that to work here, you had to go through we do 6-week challenges and 8-week challenges. You actually had to go through the full 6-week or 8-week challenge and feel the process yourself before you could even step foot as a coach on the floor, no matter how many years of experience you had, just so you could get that inside look on things. However, it also can become kind of a bottleneck if you need someone quickly because then you're just stuck there.
That's true, but I do believe I agree with you. It's imperative that somebody understands your business programming, for example, from a gym aspect or what you guys are all about. Being on the other side of things does help when you transition over. I hired one guy to be a GM that was from came from other gyms, and it was a failure. It only lasted like 2 months, but it was not a good fit. I had a lot of complaints about him just because he wasn't molded by the community to then lead them. And they didn't have a lot of buy-in with him.
Yeah, it makes it really, especially from that role. I would imagine. I haven't personally been in that particular situation, but I would imagine it would be really hard to bring someone from the streets and have them be like, "This is your new boss now. Good luck," and just hope that they do it, no matter how good their papers feel or how good they look.
Guy, we trained together, we competed together, we won a couple competitions together, but it just didn't translate to anything from within my community. So I could have the best of
Mm.
intentions and thought I was bringing in somebody that was really great. It didn't hit, and that's okay. You just gotta understand that quicker rather than later. And if I waited a year, it would have been bad.
Yeah, and that's something else that I feel like since I've seen you work with clients and I've been a part of the team, you're really good at figuring out problems and seeing almost like foreshadowing what's about to happen, which I think is something that a lot of business owners, I definitely do. We have trouble seeing it because we're so like in the weeds, we're right in front of it, like we're like in the forest, we can't get that overview look. How do you like, say I come to you and I'm dealing with a similar situation. I need staff. I'm struggling with communication with my team. How do you figure out where the bottleneck is to help me kind of find my way to fix it, basically?
Well, much like the sales process, I have to be curious. I have to understand, do you attribute the bottleneck to be? 9 times out of 10, I'll probably ask a staff member too, if there is
Hmm.
any, and make sure that your story and their story aligns, right? And not so much like that kind of makes it sound like I'm trying to catch somebody in a lie. I'm not. It's just your interpretation of what's happening and their interpretation of what's happening could be very different.
Hmm.
And then at that point, I figure out who is and what is the bottleneck. And more than likely, it's always going to be the same case. In that situation, it's communication. Ultimately, I attribute the ability to kind of see and figure out and foreshadow because I'm the oldest one on the team. I've been doing this for 21 years. I've seen things fail for a multitude of reasons. And while we always say like, every business is its own unique entity, there's still it's very formulaic. There's in terms of a successful business and an unsuccessful business, a lot of similarities comparative to most of them. So I understand what is good and what is bad in general. And then I'm not saying that there's times where I'm proved incorrect, but I would rather be proved wrong on a positive where I'm going to think that your business is going to be unsuccessful for X, Y, and Z. Let's fix those. And in reality, you're successful. Great. You proved me wrong. That's phenomenal. That's the best case scenario versus me thinking that everything was fine and dandy. And in reality, things X, Y, and Z were all needed to be fixed. So I would rather dive deeper into the negative versus the positive, and I'm not afraid to go there. So that's the ability to kind of foreshadow and see what's going to happen before it happens. But it's just I relate it. There's 3 different aspects of it that I would probably answer your question with. One is understanding from a communication standpoint what's happening, what's not happening, what's being said, and then what's being interpreted. 2 is understanding if you know the data, interpreting it correctly and understanding what the problem is. And 3, if you don't know the data, then we already have a conversation in and of itself. So those are the 3 main point. Normally within those 3 bullet points, I'm going to figure out what's wrong and what's good. I'm going to look for both. I don't only ever look for negatives. I'm going to look for positives as well. But sometimes if I do find a positive, that's going to lead me to its antithesis point, and then I can understand the whole picture.
You hit the nail on the head. You've seen these problems before and you can kind of spot like the direction these are going. which is invaluable whenever it comes to trying to run a business, because that's probably the hardest part whenever you're first starting out is the unknowns. And 9 out of 10 times, the only way you can learn anything is just by like bashing your head against the wall and then failing. And then you realize there's a door next to it. That makes perfect sense.
Or I truly believe that, I mean, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. So yes, while that specific business hasn't failed in such a way as previously, there's always similarities between them all. And I can take from one and help another.
So when you're kind of going through and playing, I call it like our natural negativity bias almost, where it's like we're better at finding what's wrong with our lives than we are finding what's right with our life. Do you always take it from like communication down, or do you look for like what's the number one thing that you normally look for whenever you find out a gym's failing, whenever you're going through their data? Do you go straight for sales? Do you go straight for retention? I guess acquisition would be the same thing, but what's like the normal go-to? Because you look like a procedure kind of guy. So I imagine you kind of have like a checklist in your head of what you're going to look for.
100%. Yes. I mean, the only reason I'm a procedure kind of guy is so that I don't miss a step.
Mhm.
Because I used to be I used to be very much like, oh, I know the answer. I'll skip C through X and go all the way to go all the
Mhm.
way to the end. And I need to make sure for myself that I don't miss anything along the way. So that's why I've interpreted or implemented, wrong word. I've implemented more of a procedure style so that I make sure that everything is checked. The question is kind of twofold, right? So one, if we're just looking at data, we know nothing, we can't communicate with them on anything other than book rate, show rate, close rate, attrition. Nothing else is available to me in terms of understanding. Then from there, I'm going to figure out realistically what's their book rate. So how many people are they able to try and bring into the facility? And then how many people are actually coming in, right? So if that's really low, then I know there's a productivity issue. And maybe it's more of a marketing thing and they don't have enough of a pool to play from to bring people in. That's okay. That's another problem, right? But if you, assuming that there's enough leads and we're not bringing enough people in, then it's a productivity issue. And then more of it's an ability to have a quality conversation issue, which immediately leads me to the entire sales process needs to be revamped. Now, normally that's going to be the case. Now, if you're really good at productivity, but you're just not good on fulfillment on the back end from an attrition standpoint, then that's very rarely going to be the case. But most of the time, most people who are able to bring a client in can typically keep them for 6 to 8 months. So long-term value is normally not as much of a problem until you get to a certain level of amount of clients. If I can look at that data and then communicate with you secondarily before I make any rash judgments, then I'm going to try and figure out what is that productivity. So are we doing the things on the back end, the unsexy things that need to be done to secure success, so to speak? For example, what is our call volume? How often are we touching base with people who've expressed interest? Are we really quick to just say all the leads are bad? Are we really quick to say everyone's hanging up on me? Are we really quick to use these overarching words of all and everyone when in reality it's 10%, 15%, maybe 20% of people that you're communicating with? But because it happened 3 times and you don't like feeling rejected, now it's a self-belief issue. So it could lead to other things, but if I'm just looking at data, it's going to lead me to one thing. If I'm able to communicate with that person and understand more in depth about them, then it's going to lead me to another thing. So there's different answers for everybody, but it depends on what I'm able to look at and what I'm able to gather.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think thinking about it, if I was put in the shoes based on the situation we're talking about, I think my biggest struggle is like I'm just all over the place whenever it comes to like trying to get things done. For example, you mentioned you based on the data, you found these constraints and these are the solutions to these constraints. Make sure you're doing the not so sexy stuff. Not doing the sexy stuff is like the death of my business. Like I suck at staying on track. That's definitely something I need to get better at.
Well, you're not alone.
What have you done to like help motivate you to get those non-sexy things like calling the leads, getting the boring mundane stuff, make sure it gets done?
Well, for my own business, I mean, it was not to go too in depth about that, but I slept on the couch in my office for a year. When I opened my gym, I actively tried to get fired from my previous job so that I can then apply for unemployment so that this was 21 years ago, so I can say it without get in trouble. But at the same time, like I tried to play the system a little bit. The only reason I bring that up is because the answer to your question of what motivated me was genuinely not being homeless and not failing.
That'll do
So
it.
there's no higher level of pushing productivity other than the fear of failure being so great. I had a family that believed in me. Like my parents truly, first of all, they didn't originally think that I was ever going to open a gym. And then when I did, I wanted to make sure that I kept it, right? And I made them feel proud of me and all that stuff. So that was a big proponent to me increasing productivity, building the brand, all of that stuff. So yeah, fear motivated me more than anything else, especially as like a 25, 26-year-old kid who, you know, I was very naive when it came to what it took to run a business. And I thought that I just needed to be a great trainer and that was it. And this was 2011 and, was able to kind of fail a little bit, but also like not have it be detrimental to the point where like everybody left my gym. I had a good foundation of people that were good people. As much as I probably shouldn't admit to it, but I do believe some of it was luck. Some people that just walked in were awesome people and they stayed for a really long time and they brought in other people. And I didn't probably ask for it as much as I should in terms of, hey, refer your friends, but it just naturally happened. You can say that that was due to the community that I built or the level of coaching and uh, availability that I had for my clients and all of that led them to want to tell other people about it. But some people just will never say anything and some people will. So I got a bunch of people who would tell other people about it. And that helped. That really helped.
I think you're downplaying, like you keep using the word luck, and I know luck plays a part in everything, but I've seen you work and you're an amazing communicator. You like know you're very good at identifying, even if you don't know what's going on in the situation all the way, you're very good at showing up with confidence and making sure that you're fulfilling the role that needs to be fulfilled. I kind of feel like in your situation, from what I can tell, obviously I wasn't there, it was more of the situation of like you made the luck happen because you just wouldn't quit. You're
No,
sleeping
I
on your
mean,
couch at the gym for fuck's sakes. Like, that's not luck. You were showing up every day and making sure you got shit done.
oh yeah, no, like 17, 18 hours a day. I was not afraid of, I always loved working, come from a good family that instilled that in me. No, I mean, you're not wrong. I attribute it to luck because it's easier than attributing it to telling everybody, yeah, you have to sleep on your couch and in your office and live, breathe and just be everything you can be for your business, which a lot of people don't want to hear. The only thing that I can control within the four walls at the time, like I never ran ads for my gym. And again, it was very early on in the process of Facebook isn't what it is now. Instagram certainly isn't what it is now.
Like,
None of those
damn, I
things
wish I
are,
had it back then.
I don't know. I'm not sure how I would have done in today's climate, but I opened my gym with Field of Dream Belief, hustled, and I went to, the town that I was in had like a town day and I went to those and then I talked with people and I was blessed to have some good people around me that came with me. We're able to talk about my gym. I do believe the level of what was controlled within the four walls helped attract people into it. Been afraid to tell somebody to where you want to get to. So before I was aware that I was selling the outcome, never talked about the process. I was like, you make my own programming, but this is the reason of why we do what we do. And I never really concentrated on the process as much as I concentrated on getting somebody to where they wanted to be, whether it was strength or weight loss or looking different, and I oftentimes sales pitch to people that would come in was very simple. It'd be like, hey, look, I know why we're talking. You want to look better naked, right? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes. And that just led me to like, great, I can get you there. And it was very simple. I never second guessed myself and my ability to do that. And that definitely comes across just based on over the years traveling and now role playing and doing all of those things with other sales teams and other people. When it's delivered in a way where you believe it, then that person believes it. But if I were to change just my verbiage a little bit and be like, yeah, I think you could really see some progress here. That comes off totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Showing off the confidence. That's what I was trying to say was like your level of confidence beat the luck. I think you just beat you beat what you wanted into existence with just pure willpower, which
Yeah, I
honestly,
don't think you're wrong. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it takes. Like people don't want to hear, like, don't want to think about the ugly truth of like, you're going to be working late hours. You also brought up the feature sales thing. I call it featureaholics, where as soon as you ask them like, "What do you do in your gym?" Oh, we have a sauna and we have supplements and we do this extra. Like you're missing the point. Those are all
Right.
the things that happen in your gym. What is the outcome of your gym? What have you done to kind of help people retrain themselves to sell the vacation, not the process of going to the vacation? Like stop selling all the features, but focus on the outcome.
That's great. So that's a good question. I fully understand now. I mean, realistically, it depends. I have a few different ways that I go about doing that. Before I do anything, I have to ask questions to understand that person, right? So, for example, like for me, I had a gym that was relatively close to my gym called Lifetime. I don't know if you're familiar with Lifetime, but
Mhm.
it's like university. I mean, they have like five basketball. My dad's actually a member of it. They have like 5 basketball courts, 3 swimming pools. They have like 10 saunas. you're not going to out feature a place like that. And for anybody that has a gym close to them, you know, a lot of our clients are more boutique fitness style. It has that type of fitness. It doesn't matter how much stuff you buy and put into your facility. You're never going to out feature that person. So I'll normally relate it to that and be like, do you think that you're ever going to get to a point where you can say you have more things than that? The answer is no. So how do we differentiate ourselves within the marketplace? Right. And then I'll usually use what a lot of people typically know is clothes or cars. How do they sell how does Mercedes-Benz sell their car? What do you know about Mercedes-Benz cars? Not a lot other than they're fancy. But the idea of owning a Mercedes-Benz is the idea of owning it, not what's inside it, not the features that it has. It's the outcome of owning the car. That brand is synonymous with success because of how they structured their sales process to be more, you should be in this car because it's a Mercedes, not because of all the shit that's inside it. So same thing with the gym. It's like, I don't want you to structure it as this is what we have in our gym for you to take advantage of. It's like, you should join my gym because you want to look better with your clothes off and I can do it, right? Or you want to lose weight, or you want to get off diabetes medication, or you are dealing with back injury or knee injury, whatever it may be. I can fix that. I can get you there. I can do this, that, and the other. You don't need to question me anymore. You don't need to worry about your issue. I have it. I got it. We'll get it there. That's going to instill more trust in somebody than you telling them that you have a sauna and you have X, Y, and Z and you have a red light therapy, this and whatever it may be that you're able to throw into your facility. So I let them see it from that side. Imagine you were a consumer. What would you value? Because realizing it, we inherently value the ownership of it, not like the process of ownership of it, or not what's in it. We value more having it. So if I'm able, you're going to value your body when you look the way you want to look more than anything else. And I can charge you a lot of money to do that because you don't have to think. That's usually how I'll talk to clients.
The car analogy is gold. I was just thinking about the fact that I love BMWs and have no idea what the inside of most BMWs look like. Like, that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the inside of a BMW and the inside of like the new Hyundais are similar. Now, don't get me wrong, BMW is a little nicer, but they both have wide screens. They both have all of the features. They both have moonroofs. They both have leather seats. They, like, most of them do massage seats at this point. Like, all of that's the same. But if you were to ask 100 people on the street, would you rather have this BMW or this Hyundai? They're going to say the BMW. Same features.
I think to add to that point too, it's just the level of people, the quality of customer you get when you change your mindset of how you sell. If you sell just on features, you're going to bring in people who only care about features. And just like you mentioned, you're not going to be able to compete with Lifetime down the street. If one of those open in your area, you're done. No mom and pop shop has the budget. Well, I guess like disclaimer, most mom and pop shops do not have the budget to put in 5 basketball courts. So
No.
That's, if you want people who are there for the result in the community, then the result in the community is what needs to be the product you're offering.
Now, I would push back on you a little bit
Mhm.
because I am in control of you getting the outcome as long as you do what I say. And I would preface that with a client. Like, look, you can come in here and you do everything I say, but you go home and eat like a piece of crap and you're never going to see any results. If you do what I say, you will see results, right? I'm in control of that. I am not in control of my community. It's something I can massage and build, but I'm not going to sell that to somebody new because I don't know what their experience is going to be with the people that are currently in my community. So I'm always hesitant to sell something I'm not in control of.
That's a
little different than a lot of people
point.
think.
No, that's a very valid point. I actually never particularly thought about that, and that's probably a weak point in my gym now that I think about it. But I have tried very strategically to make my community, like, we do community events and things like that along those lines. That's a very good point. Like, making sure you can actually control the product that you're selling is a very valuable resource as well.
Absolutely, completely agree. Making sure that the community is positive. I've been members at gyms throughout my journeys that have done a lot of things as a community together. And that's where now I had my own personal self-doubt with selling community because it's like I previously said, and this particular owner really believed in selling community. So he did a lot of things with the community, which was great, but it was oftentimes that only was 30 specific people that would only ever attend. And so the other newer people honestly felt like it was a little bit of a clique with those people that were all in that scenario. Like they always attended the events. They always did the pickleball or whatever it may be. And so it was tough to crack that egg, so to speak. So getting into that group. So it's not something that if I were in his position, I probably would have pushed as much. Or if I did, I probably would have made my community in the gym be more of what I wanted it to be. So doing more partner stuff, doing more group activities together inside the gym so that when you went outside, it wasn't so much a clique.
That makes perfect sense. So I would almost say that's probably the biggest gold nuggets anyone can take from this is making sure that if you're going to strategize your community as a big part of your business model, that you do it in a way that doesn't make those clicks. Because I've actually fell in that trap myself where I had this really tight core group of people, and it was amazing because from my point of view, I had like these 30 people that were never going anywhere. But so hard to like let new people kind of penetrate the clique and get in there and become part of it. It took a little bit of time to figure out how to get around those barriers. That's a really valuable point. I did see that we're coming on close to the end of time here. There's one question that I've promised myself I'm going to ask every person who joins me on this podcast to see what different answers I get. So the question is, if there was one thing you could have learned sooner when it comes to business, what would it have been?
Be positive, and I will explain without going on too much of a tangent because I know we're up against it, which is an old radio. I used to host a radio show. But anyway, you know a lot about me in terms of how I work and my communication style. Where I grew up in Philadelphia, it's just different. We're meaner, so to speak. Everyone kind of knows it. So I took a lot of that towards business, towards being the front man of my gym, towards all of that stuff. And I was a little too harsh, a little too hard, not only on myself, but on a lot of clients that didn't see success straight off the bat. People within my community that I probably should have been nicer to, for lack of a better word. And when I was called out on it by a woman who was actually, she's still friends with my sister, but she called me out on terrible communication style. I had one way of communicating, and it was what I knew and what I felt was best. And it didn't work for everybody, and it certainly didn't work for her. And she put my feet to the fire. And it was probably 2 years into ownership, and I'm glad she did it. But it was definitely a hard conversation for her to have. I've been called intimidating from a person. So for her to just tell me how it is, I really appreciated that from her. But after that conversation, I changed my communication style depending on who I was talking to. So with her, I knew she needed more positivity. I needed to at least present something good when I'm trying to get her to fix something bad. And once I was able to make that shift, my relationships with a lot of people within the gym and even outside the gym got much better. I still fall back into answer or fixing problems, being very black and white, not doing that as much as I should. And it's something that I'm always going to have to work on just based on my personality. My mom's that way. Like it's inherent in me to want to fix and want to take control. But I wish that when I was younger, I worked on that more. And it felt like it would have helped me both in business and in my life.
I think that's a very valuable skill to try to work on. I can agree with that. Mine is a slightly adjacent to that, was just positive on the mindset side of things. Alone would have been business sucks and business is hard. And going at it with a little bit more positivity, there's just no negative like downside to that with how
Yeah,
you interact or how you think.
you're right. No, absolutely. For me, it was more of be positive within communication with other people, but definitely could have. Times were tough in the beginning, and having self-belief is not something that I ever had to doubt. But for other people, I know that it is. So yeah, be positive in whatever way that resonates with you, whether it could be with outside communication or internal communication with yourself.
Well, I definitely appreciate your time on the podcast. I'll definitely be having you on here in the future so we can dig deeper in some ways that you help gym owners and other business owners grow. Thank you so much for joining me, man.
No, absolutely, man. It was a great time. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay, cool. Um, Basically, after talking to you a bunch and kind of getting to know you, I feel like the one thing that you really excel at, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is like finding the constraints of businesses because that's what you did for like, I don't know, on your own forever. Or do you feel like you have another strong suit you'd rather focus on today?
No, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's I would probably put that number two. The ability to understand what a business needs to work on or lacks. Normally, most of the time, it's a little bit of a blind spot for owners, and it's kind of first realizing if they understand what needs to be done, and if they don't, teaching it to them, and if they do, getting them out of their own way, which is a majority of the stuff. But Yeah, I mean, outside of that, probably I would probably rank just ahead of that is keeping someone on the straight and narrow comparative to there's especially I work best with squirrel syndrome people who,
Hmm.
the best way I can explain it on an onboarding with them when I meet with them is, you're still driving the car. It's still your business, but I'm the GPS that tells you not to get off at the off ramp. And they typically always want to, the new shiny object, or they want to take the off ramp and see what else is out there. You're driving down the highway, and the goal is to eventually press the gas pedal, but we have to know how much to do that, and that's sort of where I fall.
Okay, awesome. Well, I definitely think we can talk about both those things. I mean, you have such an interesting background. The main thing is like, because I was trying to take your advice of like, the question is the topic. So I've been
There
practicing. No, it didn't go one ear out the other. So the
you
question
go.
was how to identify and overcome constraints of business, or how would you overcome those things? So that was kind of the topic, but I'm down whatever rabbit hole we go down, I'm cool with. Just kind of a layout of what we've done so far.